Well, happy Friday, February 21st, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm MJ Bolt, the host of UnBolted, and today we've got Pastor Brian Noble on with us again this week, and we've got Stephanie Brenden, who is a good friend and also colleague, that she is the Legislative Action Team Chair of Spokane GOP here in Spokane. So thank you guys for joining us today.
Hey, great to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, great to have you. So a lot of you are familiar with Brian, but Brian, why don't you give just a little synopsis of your background, and then I want people to get introduced to Stephanie as well.
All right. Well, I'm a famous vocalist, and I sang the song "Bolted Up Baby" during MJ Bolt's election. But besides that, I've been a pastor for 30 years, Spokane GOP chair for a short period of time, and I am the CEO of FPIW and FPIW Action.
Awesome. Great to have you on again.
Thank you.
Brian and Stephanie, it's great to have you on. I'm so excited that you joined us today. So tell everybody a little bit about your background and how you got involved and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, I have been working in healthcare finance for almost 30 years. And I was I'm just your average citizen that honestly for a long time wasn't paying attention to what was happening in our legislation. State level, federal level, or local. I always voted, made sure that I voted, but I didn't really pay attention to what was happening. And I would say these last 4 years, going on 5 now, have been eye-opening, to say the least. I am awake now and watching what's happening, in particular right now with the Olympia and our Washington State legislative session. And the more I have paid attention and learned from a lot of other groups, primarily Conservative Ladies of Washington. I think for a small team of volunteers, they are super impactful with alerting everyone to Washington State legislative process and the bills that are going through. And just surprised at what I'm seeing and what our local state government is focused on. So the more I learned about it, I said, well, I think I need to get involved, and found out about what a precinct committee officer is for the Spokane County GOP, and that led to being a district leader. And I did that for this last 2 years, and now this year I'm just chairing the Legislative Action Committee for the GOP, with really just one goal of helping to summarize what I think are maybe the hot topic bills related to the Republican Party values here in our county, and making it easy for those subscribed to our Spokane County GOP email to, click in, register their position. If they, want to support a bill or oppose a bill, you can click pro or con, and just making that testify step easy. So that's been kind of my mission going into 2025, and how I got here. So
yeah, it's been awesome. We all served together on the Spokane County GOP board for a little bit of time, and Stephanie brought this Legislative Action Committee to the board back in 2023, I believe, right? Maybe the fall of 2023.
Yeah. After, I think maybe after 6-7 months into the being on the board, I thought, why aren't we paying more attention to the bills? And how can we get some more people to, pay attention to that and learn about it? So it's really, just about trying to share that message and get more people involved.
Right. And just engaging on whatever level you can, whether it's becoming, involved with the Spokane County GOP or your local county GOP, or engaging on this committee where you're getting the emails, so both of you have these great tools. So either through FPIW, the Defender app, or through the Spokane GOP legislative action emails, to kind of help people keep abreast of what are these bills that are going through Olympia and what is happening and how can you get engaged. And we're seeing record numbers of people get engaged now through the legislature, and sign in, either pro or con. The numbers are really outstanding, and we need to keep it up. We need to keep
Mhm.
more doing this. So, yeah, Brian, what are your thoughts about that as you've traveled to Olympia and you are, working your Defender app as well, trying to get more people engaged? Like, how is that going?
Well, the thing is that Stephanie is one of our number one posters within the Washington Defender app, and so she actually builds the buttons within our app as well as the legible, and we can see who's going through her recommendations. So we allow multiple recommendations in our app. We have FPIWs, we have Stephanie's through Conservative Ladies of Washington, or her own opinions, depending. I don't know which that works out.
Draw a lot from Conservative Ladies, definitely, and then I
Yeah,
maybe add a few more that I see in other categories, that
yeah,
align with the GOP
right.
values. Mhm.
And influencing Olympia effectively. So that's becoming a hub where free speech can be and different ideas can be, and people can look into it and say, hey, I like this, I like this, I want to follow Stephanie's ideas a little bit more. The goal is to raise the water of the harbor completely up. And we're seeing that on one of the bills. I believe that there was about 20,000 people who registered their position on. I'm trying to remember the bill number. But MJ, can I just show my screen for just, I mean, I know
Please
I
do.
can't physically can, but is that all right? Um,
Okay.
I want you guys to see this because it's incredible to understand this concept. And so when we have elections, and how does policy get passed? When we have elections, we have to vote these people in here, right? And then they got to make policies that go through. When we do initiative and referendums, we go through this path. So part of what we're talking about is how do you inform your legislators right here what the will of the people is? And they allow us through four basic areas: registering your position, written testimony, verbal testimony, and in person, and then also electronic testimony like through Zoom. And so there's four ways that you can do that to let them know. And it's right here in this process before the policy or the law is made that we can inform them. So we the people to rise up and let their voice be heard. This is the initiative process down here. It's another way that we get policy through. But I am so proud of each of you because I know MJ and Stephanie has brought a lot of attention. Nancy Churchill, all of them, Georgina. There's just so many out there that have brought attention to how do we let them, you know, let the legislators know what we want, and it's right here in this process that we do that. So,
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that diagram, Brian. And I think one of the things that we learned too early on in getting involved in our county Republican Party is that we not only have to elect the right, people, right? We also need to make sure and hold them accountable and make sure they're hearing from us on these bills. And that's why watching how people vote, watching how your legislators vote, and talking to them, if you see them take a vote that you don't agree with, ask them, say, were you thinking? Is there something I don't know on this bill? But that's why we have these great organizations like Family Policy Institute of Washington, Conservative Ladies of Washington, your county parties that
mhm.
help watch this, keep the people informed, and also help influence your legislators. It's so impactful and important, right? So I love that diagram, Brian. Any other thoughts, Stephanie, you have on that?
I was just going to add that the legislators, I think really appreciate, our efforts. Some of our local ones, they'll text me or email me once in a while and say, hey, did you see this bill? Make sure to promote this one or whatever. And I definitely sign up for all their emails to see what they're focused on, because we want to support them and the good bills they're putting out there. But we also, if we don't like a bill that's going through the session, and like you said, 20,000 people can say, we don't like this, that really helps them with their arguments when they're in,
Mhm.
that final vote of, are we going to push this through or not? They can refer to how many people signed in opposed. And they really appreciate our help and support on that. But then, also it's a way to hold them accountable. And, if we see them voting yes for something that we don't understand, this is a good opportunity to reach out and say, hey, why are you supporting this? And I need to better understand this. What's good about this? And so I think that it's just really important to engage with them and help them along the way.
Right.
Yeah, there's something on that voting yes too. We need to be aware of that. Remember, they use Reed's rules, right? So we oftentimes talk about Robert's rules, but they actually use Reed's rules, which says it basically if they amend a bad bill, they have to vote for that bill. So if they cause an amendment to come in to make it a little bit better,
Mm-hmm.
and that's same with Robert's rules. So what it will happen is that amendment will come in temporarily, and then they'll come back and they get to vote on it a second time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they can vote no. But they're trying to make bad bills a little bit better, maybe have some guardrails there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so just be aware that sometimes from first glance, you're like, why would they do that? But then it's
That's why you
because they,
gotta talk to them. Yeah.
yeah, you got to talk to them and they say, well, I did an amendment. So I'm forced to vote for this temporarily
Yeah.
because you can't amend something and then vote against it, right? You
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
even in Robert's rules, you can't do that. Technically that's out of line. So
Mm-hmm.
they do that temporary, but then they come back and they say, no, overall, even with my amendment, I don't like this bill. I mean, but the amendment might be there to try to safeguard some of our rights, and it may be just a little baby step of a guardrail. So we just need to be aware of that. The other thing I think is really important is know your closed-handed items and your open-handed items. So for Family Policy Institute of Washington, our closed-handed is life, it's parental rights, it's religious liberty, and it's marriage. We're not going to negotiate. Our open-handed, our environmental, immigration. We have a lot of open-handed because there's degrees or variances of those. So property tax, like we would say, fire, police, law enforcement, all are appropriate reasons for property tax. But when we start getting into funding, I don't know, DEI education, we would say that's an inappropriate use of. So that's, so there's degrees over here. So as you enter into this, you can't have everything in this hand. There's no purest state. This is your stuff that you're to degrees of and can negotiate on. This is the stuff that you're absolute on. And you got to know the difference between the two.
I wanted to share that. That's a great explanation. I think that's a great, just picture for people to kind of figure out, okay, what are the things that I am just, okay, they're non-negotiables, and what are the things that we can flex on? Brian, you mentioned the bill that had a bunch of people, about 20,000 people sign on. And I pulled this up earlier. So can you see my screen here?
Yep, we can.
So it's the mileage tax proposal. And we had 20,100 people who signed in con on this proposal. And it's House Bill 1921. And 214 people that signed in pro. So you can see that is massive right there. And we still need more people because we're not sure what's going to happen with this bill. But that's the power of the people getting engaged. You make this so obvious how the people feel that it makes it much tougher for the Democrat majority to just kind of plow over how people feel. What's your thoughts on this bill? Brian or Stephanie?
Either one. I was going to let Stephanie go first.
I think that we also have to watch. I was just going to say for the Senate, there's also a companion bill in the Senate on this one. And so that was like the week before. And then this week, that bill, the Senate version of it is Senate Bill 5726. And I didn't look yet to see how many people signed in con this week, but yeah, I'm not sure how this would be, how they would even go about monitoring this. And I just think about the funds that it would take to put something like this in place, for yet another revenue and another tax at a time when inflation is so high. And people are having trouble paying gas, and we already have the gas tax, and we already have the capital gains tax that, we had hoped would be repealed. So to add yet another tax, to something everybody does every day. And I don't think they're really taking into consideration rural areas versus city, all the things. So
I think so. This is one of those areas. So it's not one of our four. It's one that we can negotiate on, right? So we can negotiate on this a little bit. But I will tell you, the freedom to move is a foundational right and platform of the United States of America. The freedom not to move tends to be, and moving being, go from place to place, commerce, those kind of things. I don't mean like moving your house. I mean freedom to transportation. And that tends to be a Marxist type of thing. So what you're seeing in some of these larger cities too is like where they will set up tolls that are more expensive the closer you get to the center of town versus the tolls that are cheaper on the outside of town. And or this is basically a statewide toll is really what it is when you break it down, when it's based upon mileage. And it has 3 phases. It has phase 1 in 2027, 2029, and 2031. And it's all different amounts. And so I would be opposed to this because it takes away our inherent ability to have freedom to move. Now, you may say someone like me who does 60,000 miles in a year, you may be going, he has some motivations for that. I do. Because can you imagine how much this is going to cost me if it comes into effect? But that's where I don't believe it's the government's job to limit our ability to move, you might say.
Well, and they may just move a bunch of people right out of the state.
Yeah, exactly.
If they implement this, who's going to stay here?
Right.
That's another concern I have is, several of these bills, if it gets so egregious, I think you're going to have a mass exodus from Washington state.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's what they're going for.
It sure feels like it, doesn't it? Here's the companion bill that you were talking about, the 5726. So not as many people signed in, but still look at that,
That's still
huge percentage of people. 96%
and
of
actually
people.
that is a high turnout for registering your position. We follow this pretty closely. The average is probably about 1,000 on most of these things, or 2,000. So that's still very high, even though it wasn't as high as the 20,000. But yeah, so I think when we look at this, it's the idea: do people have the right to have the freedom to go about their business without being taxed every step of the way? And I think it's incredibly important to have that freedom to move.
So what other bills are you guys paying attention to right now? I know there's a lot of action. If you don't know, this is finishing up week 6 of the legislative session this year in 2025. And this today, February 21st, is the policy cutoff. So bills have it to make it through their committee of origin. And from here, then if they have a price tag on it, then they would have to go and make it through either the House Appropriations Committee, which is their fiscal committee, or the Senate Ways and Means Committee before I think the chamber cutoff, House of Origin, you will cut off is March 12th. So what other bills are you guys paying attention to right now and are concerned about?
The one that really bothered me this week, and I think that, it's not going to hit everybody in the pocketbook, but it's House Bill 1938, and it's the redesign of the Washington state flag. So that was one that we put out in our alerts. And when I kind of started this journey of paying attention, I was doing some research on, I really need to learn more about our Constitution and our founding of this nation. And I did Patriot Academy, has some great, resources to learn that Constitution alive and all of that. But you learn so much about George Washington, and the history on founding our country. And as Brian said, our freedom, it's all about, freedom. And so George Washington represents for me freedom. And so the thought about changing the flag, potentially removing George Washington, or they don't like the color green, the graphics don't fit with whatever rules, to me, that's just, what are we going to end up with, if they redesign the flag? So I don't like, the efforts to sort of erase a history that is so important. And I don't want people to forget that, freedom doesn't come for free, and we have to protect it. And so that was the one that I got, definitely wanted to highlight this week. And I hope some people, logged in and said con for that one as well.
Yeah. What do you think about that one, Brian?
Well, I think there may be a more sinister reason in that, they want cultural diversity. So one of the things that the sponsors have, those who may be for this, I should say, I should be less direct, may be for this is so that we can be, quote, culturally diverse. But when you know Marxist communist history, one of the things is to tear down the history to make evil those heroes of past. Now, whenever we talk about a hero of the past, we are not in any way saying that everything they did was perfect, or you know we would even endorse today. We're not saying that. We're not denying the fact that they were human, just like we are all human. This is the reality that we forget. Like, none of us are perfect. We've all fallen short. There's none righteous, and yet they want to tear that down, because if they tear down the history, people quickly forget. And so I think there's a sinister approach to say, just like this is why President Trump is changing names of things back to what they originally were. And I know that makes people sometimes frustrated, but there's nothing wrong with being proud to be an American and to love your country. You shouldn't worship your country. It's God first. But we can definitely steward what God has entrusted to us with excellence. So I said, thumbs down, or my team did, I should say, said thumbs down to changing the flag. It's erasing a part of history, and I don't think it's appropriate.
Yeah, great point. So here's the bill. So again, if you're new with us, we like to help give you the tools to help you navigate this and understand how these bills and these processes work. If you go to ledge.wa.gov, you can type in the bill number, and that bill number was 1938. So we type that in, and here is the screen which tells you where it's at. So this is, again, like we've been talking about, the Washington State Flag Redesign Committee. So it is interesting to me that they're, a $12 billion shortfall, and they're talking about doing things. I mean, this feels frivolous. This is not really a high priority right now, and it's going to cost a lot of money. Think about the implementation of changing the flag and on everything that it would have to change on. So, but right now it looks like has been introduced in committee. And if we look down here, there was a public hearing on the 18th. So a couple of days ago. So far, it has not been scheduled for executive session, which is it would have to do, based on the rules. We understand by the end of today.
Right.
However, we do know that you have to pay attention to budgets, because some of these things that seem to, quote, die and not make it through committee sometimes pop back up through the budget process. So we'll keep a close eye on this.
Say that again, because that is incredibly important. I want them to get that. Go ahead, say it may pop up during what?
Through the budget process is where it can come back.
So this is where people get frustrated. And what you're saying is incredibly important, MJ. That's why I want you to say it again. Like, watch the budget process, hone in on it, because it's the workaround of the system. So good job on saying that, MJ. I think it's incredibly important.
Well, and we're seeing a lot of people are following the national news with the Doge committee. They're finding all this frivolous spending right now, and they're finding out where our money has been going to, our taxpayer dollars. Remember, government funding equals taxpayer, you're paying dollars, your citizen paying dollars that are going to these things. And so we're seeing what kind of crazy things are happening, where the money has been going and funding these things in our nation. There's some people that have been diving into where some of this funding is going, even in our state. And we also have some very nefarious, very frivolous spending issues coming directly from our government. And there's a few accounts, if you follow me on X at MJ Life is Good, that I'm definitely retweeting what I see. Ari Hoffman's been sharing it, and there's a Doge Wa, I think it's Wake Up Washington account that's also been following that. So if you don't think that's happening, it is happening. And here's another, seems like a frivolous thing that is not top priority for the majority of the citizens of the state.
Yeah, and make sure they don't send it into, let's research our flag for $200 million or 200,000 or whatever the dollar amount be. And then, we invested all this money, so now we have to change it. That's it's incredibly deceptive. I don't know how else to say it, but
yeah, for sure. We appreciate our commenters and our visitors chime in. Ken Ramey is watching you. Thanks, Ken. So if you're joining us, please go ahead and comment if you've got questions for Stephanie or for Brian. You can about legislation or about county parties or about maybe something else pertaining to legislation, please, share and let us know you're watching. We appreciate you all being here. So what other things are kind of top of mind this week? I know they're calling it the initiative killer 5382, which has gained a lot of attention, even our Secretary of State. So basically this would make it much harder for the citizens of Washington to pass an initiative. And we had those 6 initiatives that we got enough signatures, over 400 and some thousand signatures 2 years ago. Correct? Am I right on my timeline? I believe 2023.
It seems like it was forever ago, but yes.
Yeah. And we got some, including I-2081, which is a parents' rights initiative that passed through the legislature back in 2024, in the spring of 2024. And now this bill is looking to make it way harder. So we even had the Democratic Secretary of State, Steve Hobbs, voice his opinion that this is a bad bill. What thoughts do you guys have on that?
Say the number again for me. I was
5382.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when we look at these bills, there's, well, first I want to say this. Our legislative initiative and referendum process isn't a privilege. This is so important. People don't get this. We act like, oh, we're so it's so nice that they allow us to do this kind of attitude. No. Our Constitution says very clearly it's our right? So a privilege is something like it's a favor that they allow us to do initiative referendum. And if you understand that all power is inherent to the people and the government derives its just powers from the people, that this is the power that we did not give over to them, which is the initiative and referendum process. When you look at Article 2, Section 1, we reserve these powers for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's sometimes been some attitudes like, oh, well, the people don't know best. They're not involved. And it's the people have all inherent power. Right. And so that's why it's called a republic, that and I talk about this often, that it's the sovereignty of God and free will of man. That's what makes us a republic. And so I just think it's important that we don't take lightly them trying to take away what we have not given to them. So it would be, in my mind, it'd be theft from the people of their political power.
That's a great point. Stephanie, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just completely agree with, I think Brian said that beautifully. This is a we the people function that we need to retain. This is a critical, when we start to lose our voices, and it gets chipped away, pretty soon you have big, government that's so big that it becomes tyranny, which is exactly what, George Washington and, our founders were fighting against, to take back those freedoms. And so it's a slippery slope. I think they take very small steps over a very long period of time. And pretty soon you realize, oh, I can't just drive anywhere around the state without paying a lot of money. And, if I don't like what the legislator's doing, I have absolutely no say and no way to, repeal a law. I just think, these are just good examples of we're heading in the wrong direction, and we need more people involved to see that and help us turn this around.
Yeah.
One of the things, MJ, to understand too, is that we're, as conservatives, we're in triage mode. So understand that the liberal movement controls every committee, controls every floor, House and Senate, it controls the executive branch and the judicial branch, right? So they don't have to come to conservatives to get permission from us on things. So I just want to remind people, make sure that when you are entering in, that you're prayed up, right? We need to be praying over these things. It's as much a spiritual battle as it is a physical battle, because if we don't have the right heart when we go in, it's not going to create transformation. Number 2 is understand that without the heart transformation in triage mode, it won't change, because it's a heart issue, right? So people will make laws that reflect, as James chapter 3 says, selfish ambition, natural desires, all these kind of things. And so that those laws will cause disorder and every evil practice to thrive. And so we have to begin to understand that, man, we are in triage mode. Don't shoot our own. Get out there and fight shoulder to shoulder together. And of course, I'm talking through the political realm. I'm not talking, physically fight or something, but, through letting your voice be
Engage.
heard, that kind of thing.
Yeah, engage. You
Engage.
got to
That's the word
be engaging. And if one of the other things that you can see on these bills, here's 5382. Hopefully you can see that on your screen now. Pulled that bill up. So the sponsors are Valdez, Lias, Nobles, Saldana, and Wilson, Claire Wilson. If those are your legislators, if those are the people that represent you in your district, maybe you're a conservative and they're not, that's okay. They still represent you.
That's right.
Reach out to them and ask them, tell me what you are trying to do with this. Ask them questions, see where maybe you can have some commonality. Just beating somebody over the head, they're going to probably stop listening. Honestly, we need to do that with signing in pro and con, because we need our legislators, to see the mass amount of people that are against these bad bills. But otherwise, reach out and try to have conversations with people, because they are human. A lot of times there are things that we can that we honestly agree on. Most of us agree. We want a better future for our the next generation and our children. Right. And some just maybe see a little differently. Here's this bill. So 5382 started in the Senate. It was introduced. It did. If you go down here again, the bill history, you can see it did have executive action on the 18th. It did pass the committee. And then it's referred to Ways and Means, because it does have a fiscal impact. So now we can see there's a hearing on that scheduled for the 24th on the Senate Committee on Ways and Means at 1:30. And so we'll want to watch that. Again, sign in, make sure you're sharing your position. And through these tools, through Family Policy Institute of Washington Action.org, or their Defender app, or through SpokaneGOP.com. Stephanie, how do people get in touch with you and get signed up for that legislative action email that you send out every week?
They can just email me at legislative@SpokaneGOP.com. And we can give them the link to sign up to subscribe.
Legislative, say that again.
Legislative@SpokaneGOP.com.
Okay, legislative@SpokaneGOP, and I'm putting that in the chat now. So yeah, we're going to want to pay attention to that bill and make sure that we're signing in against this bill and to stop it in its tracks.
And Stephanie runs a huddle on the Washington Defender app too. So she's posting those, building those out, and you can push her one click right in. She's doing a great job, by the way. In our next version of the data entry, we're going to have a little treat to make it simpler for you, Stephanie. So it's going to get better.
But it does take a little bit of time.
Yeah, it does take a little time. So we're going to make it faster. But she's been faithful to just say, hey, let's build this out and strategize together as we go. And so, yeah.
Brian, tell people a little bit more about how they would find, like, if they want to go on there and find what Stephanie's doing, how could they connect with that exactly?
So if you go on the Washington Defender app and you go to Huddle, Stephanie's actually doing two things. She's working through the Spokane County grassroots movement. And so you'll see her posts in there. They have their own page. And then she's also putting that up to the Washington Defender Huddle. So she's doing both in there. So she's making her positions known. And you'll just see S. Brenden and her poster there. And that's, if you want to follow where she's leading on those bills, it's very, very easy. One of the things that we're doing in the next release is we're going to make it searchable for the huddles. So you get, right now there's like 600 huddles. You get them all kind of loaded up on your page, but you're going to actually be able to reduce that down to the ones you're a part of. This is all brand new technology that we're doing. So it just takes a little bit of time of development. It's version 1 as we go. But it's really nice because if you turn on the autofill of your phone, literally within 10 seconds, you can register on a bill. You just push the button, hit autofill, bloom, and then it's done. Mm-hmm. I want to point out why this is important. So when you hear an elected say, hey, my constituents don't want this bill, or my constituents want this bill, or my constituents haven't spoke on this bill. They're referring to the written testimony, register your position, those kind of things. That's what they're, because remember, they may be thinking of their 10 friends, who knows, but this is the official way that you allow them to know as a constituent. Now, I just talked about praying. We have a program called Adopt and Elected. We need every Democrat adopted, and you're going to do just a couple things for them. You're going to pray for them, that they will have wisdom, discernment, understanding. And we're going to do that spiritual part. And we're going to mail them a letter and say, we're praying for you. And then I'd say, invite them to coffee. Say, will you have coffee with me? And let's sit down and talk about this. Because when they're saying that, when you're registering your position, when you're meeting with them face to face and having that relationship with them, then that's when hearts are changed and minds are changed. And be practical, be reasonable, be a good listener, but also be clear. Like, this one really disappoints me. I can't, I don't understand. Help me understand why we're, taking away rights of the people. That's what it appears to me. And what's wrong with that, perspective, and be teachable in that moment. And then listen, and then share your perspective, and have that robust dialogue in a kind, polite, thoughtful, but yet direct way.
Stephanie, how has your relationship with your legislators changed throughout this last couple years, you getting engaged, and, talk to people about like what your personal experience has been with that?
Well, I think I just have a much, better understanding of what they go through, and, having, a minority right now, it's even harder. And I believe that some of the rules on the House side, this year even changed so that, I think they said it was a 50-plus-year-old rule that you would allow debate, on the bills and topic, and so much time for both sides. And it sounds like that rule was changed, and there was, they were limiting the ability to have debate. And so, with their voices being shut down like that, I can't imagine being in their shoes and how frustrating that would be. Is like, I am elected, I'm here representing, my constituents, and, and now I can't even have the opportunity for debate. So I think that I have a lot of respect and admiration for the people that, are spending so much of their time. I think they say it's a part-time job, but it really is a full-time job. and man, they are fighting for us as much as they can. But there is a lot of opposition right now. And so we definitely need to be, I think I agree with Brian, praying for both sides, praying for eyes to be open and discernment and wisdom. But I think for our Republican, friends, we need to pray for, strength and courage and, resilience to continue that battle. So,
Yeah.
Let me, if I can, just comment. I was on the floor last Thursday, and I opened in prayer. And here's how I just put the adopt elected if someone wants to adopt one of them in there. But here's what I saw. I saw the parliamentarian pretty much giving the talking points to the chair the entire time, which was really surprising to me, because I'm sitting right there on stage. I don't know if you saw that. And so I'm like, oh, all the lines are being fed, which I thought, maybe she was new. I don't know. I'm trying to be gracious in that moment, but it was very interesting. Secondly, I saw them say they expedite the process to such a degree. It's like this, we bring the following bill onto the floor, and then they said reading of the bill, and then they went through the first line, last line. So they don't even read it. They just skip to the last line. They read that. They then point to whoever, the person who's sponsoring the bill spoke for like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Person opposing the bill spoke for 10, 15 seconds. Hearing no more debate, closed. And that literally was how fast it went, right? Like on these life-altering decisions. Now, a lot of that's supposed to be done in committee. I get that. But the reality is it's not solidified until the members of that House, and I was on the House side that day, do that. So now they've had, 30 seconds in their caucuses. Maybe they got debriefed, hopefully. But, I'm just saying I'm just reinforcing what Stephanie is saying, that, they have the right to change the rules of debate on the floor, but was that the best thing to do? Right.
Right. So in technically speaking, what they did is they moved it from a supermajority. So it used to end debate. It used to typically it takes 2/3 majority, right? And that's a supermajority. So the House, Democrats almost have a supermajority, but not quite. Like 1 or 2 votes away from supermajority, right? So at the beginning of the session, they agreed to change it from a supermajority to a simple majority. So that means the Democrats can shut it down whenever they want to. So that's what changed. And I think you're right. I think it was 50 or even 100-year-old tradition that this was there. So like Brian is saying, they go, because only when it's in committee, you only have a handful, maybe a dozen people that are on those committee hearing those bills, right? It's not the whole House side.
Right.
So the chance for the entire House to vote on this, debate the issue, is very important part of the process. And when they can just shut that down with a vote of a simple majority, and they have the majority, then that gets expedited and that due process doesn't happen. And you've got really important, opinions and thoughts and maybe even evidence that could be brought up on that floor for that. So that is definitely very concerning that they moved to that this year, for sure.
Yeah, it's just interesting how fast the process goes, and how directed, I'll just say, the process is.
Yeah.
In other words, it didn't seem like the principles, and I don't know Reed's rules as much as I know Robert's rules, but in Robert's rules, there's a foundational principle that the majority give time for the minority to allow their voice to be heard. And once the minority's voice has been heard, and the assembly has decided, that the minority come back and faithfully steward with the majority, right? So this underlying idea of that we want those who are in the minority for their voice to be heard, and compel people to come. Well, it's in my perspective, it was very much eliminated through this. And I do know that there's a transition between this Friday today and some of the things that will be happening here in the future. But it saddened my heart to see that.
Yeah, for sure. I bet, especially getting to see it live action. If you've never gotten a chance to go to Olympia, check the calendar. You can check the calendar on ledge.wa.gov, and you'd want to definitely, it's interesting to watch the committees, but it's even more interesting, in my opinion, to watch the House action. And so when they're going to be scheduling a whole bunch of House action now, because again, they have until March 12th to get it out of each of the chambers. And then, so it passes that part, that one, first part of the 3-legged stool, to move it on to the next chamber. So policy cutoff is today. Fiscal cutoff is next Friday in a week. So it's got to make it out of those committees. Keep abreast of which ones are getting hearings, this next week in committee, but then also be watching for that floor action. So I also wanted to talk about 5181 and the companion 1296, because we've talked a lot about parental rights. That kind of seems to be the big topic right now. And just to remind everybody, just in case you haven't been paying attention, or maybe you were on vacation the last couple of weeks, we had the Senate Majority Leader, the Democratic Senate Majority Leader in Olympia, make this comment on national news a couple weeks ago. Let's listen.
Kids over 13 have the complete right to make their own decisions about their mental health care. Parents don't have a right to have notice. They don't have a right to have consent about that.
Thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if you saw the Brandy Cruz interview where she interviews a transgender woman, which is a boy, right? A man. And they had this whole discussion. And did you guys see that or not? Because I won't explain the whole story if you didn't. Okay. So she interviews a dad and a young man. We'll just say that because that's what he is. But he claims that he's a woman. And the interview, the transgender woman or man, I don't know how to say it. The young man says, I don't even agree with that. At 13, we don't have the right to do that. right? We need to respect our parents and respect those things, you know. So I thought it was really interesting how at least in that interview, Brandy did a good job of, because it was on sports. So the young man was playing in girls sports, and so she was like, I don't agree with you. And so but they had set it up where the minor and the father knew Brandy's position, and it was really good to listen to. And she with a healthy degree challenged the idea, and with a healthy degree just said, you know, this is unacceptable. You're the person that is causing the awkwardness and the uncomfortableness. You need to serve those around you by stepping down and not doing that. And so it was a good interview. But my point is that the young man said, I don't, because she played that clip too. I don't even agree with what he just said, that we shouldn't have that right at that age. So that was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Stephanie, your thoughts?
My thoughts, I don't know if it's the right word is ironic, but there is a Senate bill right now that we were watching just this week. We had an alert for a public hearing on Senate Bill 5622, and it was establishing age restrictions on diet pills and other dietary supplements. and you have to be 18 to purchase protein powder, for an example. So why do you have to be 18 to purchase protein powder,
right,
or 21 to drink alcohol,
right,
but you only have to be 13 to make a life-changing decision in other areas, that's so what I just don't understand. I'll just say I don't understand it. I don't understand why some things you have to be this age and some things 13 is okay. I think 13 is too young. I remember how I was at 13, and I don't think I was ready to make those kind of decisions. So
yeah, and this is where I think we sometimes get into this dialogue of like, what's an absolute in this situation? You know, where's the principle in this situation? And I would just say this, like, on the personal level, as an adult, if you want to make the decision to do medical change yourself medically or whatever, that is, we believe in freedom. Go for that. Don't shove it down our throat, right? Like, you be you, but don't make us worship you, right? But B, when it comes to minors are technically minors because they're minor, right? I mean, we say that there's a age where we begin to engage more of the brain function. And when we have a disconnect between protein powder and physical mutilation of one's body, it is just absolutely asinine. It just irritates me from the inside out, with I hope is a good irritation, to say that this isn't right. This is physically not right. And I get it. We all struggle in different things. We all have different crosses, you might say, to bear. I understand that. I'm saying, as young people, what we need to do is not indoctrinate them towards a lifestyle that's going to physically harm them for the rest of their lives, but really be supportive and caring and helping them to understand that the greatest identity that they have about themselves is that is a foundation, is their body. It's the biggest. So I was got canceled from this interview on this topic. They said yes.
Canceled.
Yeah, they said yes, and then they said no. So she wanted to pre-interview me, and she asked this question. I said, well, let me ask you this. What are the foundations of our identity? Our body is one of them. Think about this.
Oh, yeah.
Our chemistry, so our genetics, right? So chemistry is like, endorphins in the brain, all that is part of our identity. Our occupation, all these things are our identity. So you're telling me there's eight indicators of that they're a male, let's say, and there's only one: emotion, the soul, emotion, thoughts, and desires. I'm putting that as one that says opposite of that. 7 out of 8 are saying, no, this is what you are. X chromosome, your genetics, your testosterone, all these things, your body. And then I don't need to name every body part, but you get it. So you have all these indicators, but one area, the soul, which we know that the soul can be manipulated. Mind, will, and emotions can be manipulated and or corrupt, right? We know that. Is saying the opposite of those things. I think we should encourage our young people so that they have a firm identity to go off of, quote, the science, the physiology, the plumbing you got is the plumbing you are. The chemistry, the testosterone or estrogen that you have is what you are. The chromosomes, what you have is what you are. I think that gives a lot more security and love to our young people than saying, let's take the thing that can be corrupted or manipulated and trust that.
Yeah. It's so, like you said, it's frustrating, it's absurd, it's criminal, it's harmful to our children. I had Pete Serrano on a couple days ago, and we were talking about this. He helped the state fight some of the left organizations against the initiative or against the law I 2081 that was passed last year. That they were trying to say it was unconstitutional. And one of the things that he said, Alabama actually wrote an amicus brief, and they have gone through 2 years of litigation on this issue. And so they have, a wealth of information. So they wrote an amicus brief, I think, to the national lawsuit against maybe Trump's executive order. And so here we have, Alabama that has been fighting this issue. We have numerous countries, Finland, and we couldn't remember the other one, that has banned these procedures for minors because they have learned it's so harmful for kids. We have numerous people that have detransitioned that said that are suing medical establishments because they did these procedures for a minor that didn't know better, and they regret these things. There's so many cases of this. So to basically, to take these protections away from parents and to say you're 13 and you can make these decisions it is so harmful. And yet we continue to push these ideologies in these policies in our state. And it's reckless. It's reckless and it's harmful.
It is.
Yeah.
I want to know where there was a season where anti-circumcision people went out and said, well, you can't mutilate the bodies. I don't know if but it's the same people oftentimes who are for these transitioning. I'm like, this makes no sense. I mean, like, have a common stand on these items. Now, can be a religious practice for many people, and so I'm not discrediting that. But what I am saying is, you look at this, and there is a concept of just disorder and disingenuousness when you talk about you can't buy protein powder. I didn't know that, Stephanie. So that got me worked up today. That got me fired up right now.
Yeah, that was Senate Bill 5622. You'll have to check that one out.
I'll have to check that one. That one makes me mad.
I think those ones sometimes kind of, fall under the radar because it's not like earth shattering or anything. But I just thought, why do we have an age limit? We're establishing an age limit on diet pills and dietary supplements. That's the name of the bill. And the age is 18.
Yeah.
Why is that 18?
Great point. So that one's 18, but you can't buy protein powder, but you can, go ahead and do other things to your body, mutilation.
But you can't drive a car, you can't drink alcohol, and you can't buy diet pills or.
Let's be honest. Like, I don't think we're being truthful. You never transition, right? So even when they cut parts off and they make simulated parts, I mean, I don't want to get graphic here, but it's not for real. People have medical issues after doing this for long periods of time. I'm not claiming to be a doctor. I've just heard testimonies of people who still have medical issues from that. The inability to transition, your chromosomes, your X chromosome and your Y, they don't transition. So it's a false or misnomer to say there's an actual transition. It is an alteration. Those are two different things. You are altering your body. And I can tell you that there's going to be people, I don't know. It just drives me nuts. The inability to ever have children, if you ever change your mind on that topic, the inability to have an orgasm, the inability to do these things. You're like, this is life-changing things, all because of people who want to alter their body in a time that they don't necessarily like their body. It's mind-blowing to me.
I wanted to bring up this bill because we wanted to show you it really is a bill and it's really happening. So here's the, establishing age restrictions, like Stephanie said, on diet pills and dietary supplements, Senate Bill 5622. So we plugged that number in and it pulled it up. So here it did have a hearing and they did take executive action. in the Business, Financial Services, and Trade Committee, which is interesting. And it did pass. So it is passed out of committee and onto the Ways and Means because there's probably a fiscal note. It has not been scheduled yet for a hearing in Ways and Means, but we're going to want to keep abreast of that and pay attention to that because that is very, what's the word? Like, would you say ironic, Stephanie, that they have that? And then here is the other bill that we were talking about, the Senate Bill 5181, which was the bill that would, again, limit more parents' rights to chip away at the bill that was passed and the initiative that was passed the last 2 years, initiative 2081, which established the Parents' Bill of Rights and notification for parents on these types of things. This 5181, we've been talking about this for a bit. It definitely, we've got Claire Wilson was the primary sponsor, Peterson, who's the Senate Majority Leader. All these people are Democrat leaders that have sponsored this. And as we can see, it is on a fast track. We say that because it already made it all the way through the Senate. It made it through the committee. It was and on the Senate floor and passed out of the Senate floor. So now it is in the House. It doesn't have a scheduled hearing yet, public hearing. Here's kind of what's happened, as you can see, what we just talked about. And then the other thing, you can always go to the bill documents. Here's the original bill. The reports are helpful. They can kind of give you a synopsis. They're usually fairly done. Here's the amendments. And then here's also the videos. If you want to watch the different conversations, the hearings that happened and hear the discussion, you can see those here. They don't have the Senate House action, or I'm sorry, the Senate floor action discussion here, but you can find that on TVW by looking up the bill number.
Let me show you that really quick. So we have that in our app. It's built in.
Okay.
So let me just show. So if you go to our Learn section, so we have Activate and we have Huddle and Learn. If you go to the Learn section, and we have the TVW button right there that takes you in, so you can start seeing these things. So awesome. Remember, we're trying to create a one-stop shop for all this information, so that we don't have to have 1,000. No ledge.wa, no this. You go there and you can get over there really quick. And also for a lot of the things that MJ showing you, like the bill libraries and how do you look up these bills and search for those bills, we have quick links all over to LedgeWad. Just one place you can go to get all this information and not have to be an expert, digger. So the TVW is there. We're actually looking at negotiating with them to have a live feed into the app on the floor debates and those kind of things.
Oh, that would be.
But we haven't gotten that negotiated yet. So we're working on that.
And you brought up a great point, and I meant to say something about it, where you have the pre-fill in the app. You don't get the pre-fill just going to ledge.wa.gov. So everything you have to kind of re-enter, I think, unless I have a setting that's funky.
Yeah, you can create an account if you want, but I can show you really quick on the app at the stage here. So like if I want to register con on this bill, it's literally this. And if your phone is set up right, I go there. And this is what the buttons like Stephanie are billing you. I click my name. I click autofill. One of the things, if you have an iPhone, make your labels all the same in your saved contact. And I'm done. I just registered my position on that bill. And then I can go back and we do this, and Stephanie does this too. You click done because sometimes you can register so many of these, you forget which ones you've done. So you click done so you know you've done that one.
Yeah.
But that's how quick and easy if you have the autofill set up correctly. On the website, it's a little bit more tricky, but you can create an account, and we tell you how to do that right here at the end if you want to create an account for the website.
Yeah, I sometimes will do it from my computer, and I do have autofill set up on my computer as well. So I can do it in just a few seconds, get through 20 bills.
Right.
So that
That's
doesn't
awesome.
take very long at all.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're going to work at doing is making a web version of this with the huddles and everything. So we'll be fundraising about $200,000 to do that, and that way it'll be seamless between the phone and this, that you can begin to operate these one-stop shop to get this information. So like
Awesome.
MJ, just so you know, MJ Bolt UnBolted is here. If you want to catch up on other episodes, she's in here. Right here, UnBolted Parents Rights. And so you can do that. In fact, here's the one on the transgender one from Brandy there is in here.
Okay.
So yeah, there's just a lot of great, we try to make that whole spectrum of conservative thought to come into one spot, so you can get all these different voices. I'm praying right there on the Olympia, the steps. That's what MJ embarrasses me about. No, I'm just kidding.
I played that last week or Monday.
And I
You
turned
didn't know I
bright
was gonna
red.
play that.
I turned bright red. I'm like, but anyways.
You did great. Yeah. So many important things. So these are these tools that you can use, to help you get engaged. Get engaged, right? That's the biggest message. Get engaged. Pray. One of the things that can be daunting with everything, we're seeing all these bad bills and bad governmental leadership right now in our state. Remember, God is bigger. God is bigger. And we got to keep that, our eyes on him. I got to admit, like a couple of weeks ago, I got very discouraged. I'm just like looking at all these bad bills that were coming. And I'm just like, geez. And we've got the, minority, almost a super minority in the legislature. And the Lord reminded me, MJ, I'm bigger. I am bigger. Believe that I am bigger and I overcome. Right? No weapon formed against you shall prosper. And I know I share that faith with Brian, obviously, and Stephanie as well. In fact, that's what brought us all to this work in engaging in our community, is that similar faith and that belief. So get engaged through Family Policy Institute of Washington, the Defender app, or their website. Stephanie, tell people again how they can contact you to get on that email list, that legislative action.
They can email me at legislative@SpokaneGOP.com.
Nice. And we put that thank you, Brian. And we put that in the chat as well. And then you can also go to your county party, your local county party, and get involved. SpokaneGOP.com is our local Spokane GOP county party website, and get involved. You can maybe you can get on a committee, maybe you want to become a PCO, maybe you just want to connect with these legislative action items and be the do stuff from your home. You can do that right from your phone, from your home. There's so many things you can do. You can pray. The Defender app gives you opportunities to pray every day. And there's other things, like you said, you can adopt an elected. You can pray for them, because we know the foundation is spiritual. That's right. Everything,
Absolutely.
The foundation is spiritual. Any final thoughts that you have? Stephanie, let's start with you. What, anything else that you've taken from the session the last couple of weeks, or any other bills that are top of mind that you want to make sure to highlight, or final thoughts that you have?
I think just, I think the final thought I have is just, we just really need more people to get engaged. And, I understand that, everybody has really very busy lives, and you're juggling all kinds of things with family and jobs and, all the things. But this is not as hard as I think people think it is. And once you kind of get into a rhythm with it, you can do it so quickly, just a few minutes a week even, and you can register your position. And that one small little step, if everybody did it,
It makes a huge difference.
Is so powerful, and it really could, shift things in another direction. So that would be my final thoughts.
That's great. Brian?
My final thoughts is I like to be strategic in the sense of know your closed-handed items and know your open-handed items. Like, sit down and make a list, think through it. What are the items that I'm not going to negotiate on? What that has different degrees of items, right? And even in your closed-handed items, sometimes you have to take a baby step to get any influence on that. But know this and know this. That's number one. Number two is, I was at a nursing home last week, and the guy says, he raised his hand. He says, I don't mean to be over communicate here, but I can tell you that we've made it so easy through the app to register our position. This guy had to be like 80 or 90. That while I'm doing my business in the morning, I register my position on all the bills. And I'm like, can you believe that? You know, and he goes, I said, it's okay, it's all right. And so he was just very excited. And so, you know, there's people like Stephanie, there's people like Conservative Ladies of Washington, or Influencing Olympia, or what's that, Georgina, or whatever her name is, out of, is that right?
Yeah, I think Snohomish County.
Yes, Snohomish County. There, Future 42. There's a whole bunch of people who do these things. And, you know, we're trying to get them all into one spot, let a variety of ideas to be heard and expressed so that people can make better decisions and have easier access. But what I'm saying is there's no excuse not to be involved to a certain degree. Even if you just take one or two of your, you know, open-handed and one or two of your closed-handed and say, I'm just going to follow those ones, right? And I'm going to follow, you know, public safety, and I'm going to follow life, or whatever. I don't know, whatever ones you have. I'm going to follow those 2 items and work on those, and you know, so that you're not overwhelmed. So I would say make a list of your closed-handed and open-handed ones.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate you guys talking about that and talking about the different ways that you can get engaged. I'm going to post a couple other places that we've mentioned here in the chat box. We've got conservativeladiesofwashington.com that we've mentioned, SpokaneGOP.com, FPIWAction.org, and influencingolympia.com. These are just some of the many people that and organizations that help, you know, keep you in tune and help make action easier. You know, you kind of get a nice synopsis. A lot of them, just like Stephanie, sends out, you know, hey, alert, here's the bills we're focused on this week, you know, so it's not completely overwhelming, right? The other thing I just want to leave you with is so many people are paying attention to what's going on nationally. And it is very exciting. It is very exciting to finally see a constitutional loving, freedom loving, liberty loving president and leadership in control of the White House right now. And it's fabulous. And I am watching it, glued to it as well. I won't pretend that I'm not. But all politics are local. Remember, the most influence you can have is at the local level. And that is super important. And we can make an impact at the national level. But the closer you can make more of an impact in your own community, it just is reality. So yes, wonderful, exciting stuff. And we need your help to change this community here, because Washington is worth saving. Washington State is worth saving. Our communities are worth saving. Every single one of our counties are worth saving. Every one of our cities. And we've got a lot of work to do here. If you're in Spokane, we've got a lot of work to do here in Spokane. You know, we've got a very progressive, liberal city council in Spokane. They have the majority at 5-2. And we need your help. We need your engagement at the school board level, at the county commissioner level, at the city council level, you know, and then on to the state, our legislators and our different things. So yes, exciting, you know, what's happening at the national level, but we cannot sit back and rest on our laurels, because this is how we got here, right? Everybody remember what happened in 2020 and 2021, when all of a sudden everything was shut down and all these mandates came down that we knew were unconstitutional. And yet, how, you know, that's what woke me up. How is this happening? How, you know, this is completely unconstitutional. Well, you have to get involved in these processes and make your voices heard and engage in these so that doesn't happen again. And we can reverse some of those bad policies that allowed that to happen. So get engaged, reach out to Brian, reach out to Stephanie, reach out to me, and keep doing your part, because this is how we're going to turn this around. So appreciate you guys being here with me. Stephanie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for jumping on.
Yes, love having you. We'll have to do this some more. Brian, as always, thank you for coming and sharing with us your, you know, thoughts and your experiences from Olympia. And we'll look forward to doing another update here soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Blessings.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.